Let me do a disclaimer first of all. This is just a study guide. These are not my words. I'm not doing it for compensation, and I don't own the copyrights. I'm just doing this as a study tool. Okay, these are med notes. Anatomy. And, okay, okay. Anatomy of nervous system cells. A single neuron can be very long, measuring a meter or more. It may start at the tip of your finger and end at your spinal cord. It has dendrites that receive information. The body contains a nucleus and organelles for protein synthesis. An axon that carries a nerve impulse along its length to the synaptic knob. Dendrites are a neuron that may have anywhere from 1 to 1,000 dendrites. The nerve dendrites, the more dendrites it has, the more information it can process. Okay, and I want to show this picture. It shows the dendrites. Okay, and that's the nucleus. That's the mitochondrion. That's the Golgi apparatus. Okay, so the dendrites branch to make multiple connections and form precise pathways. Incoming messages travel from the dendrites toward the body of the neuron. The body contains the nucleus and organelles for protein synthesis. Protein neurotransmitters were released from the knob at the end of a nerve cell. An imbalance in specific neurotransmitters can result in mental disorder. For example, depression is a mental disorder that affects a person's mood by altering the way someone feels, thinks, sleeps, eats, and works. Disease points, axonal transport. Empty synaptic vesicles are carried in the opposite direction back to the body for reuse in what is called retrograde axonal transport. Viruses such as the rabies virus may hitch a ride with either type of transport. A bite on the hand from a rabies infected animal may damage a neuron. When the neuron is damaged, the axon leaves the neuron body at the axon hillock, also called the trigger zone. Electrical messages travel away from the body, down to the axon's end, which branches in the terminal arborization. Arbor means tree. A synaptic knob at the end of each branch forms a synapse junction with another cell. Okay, CEPH, cephal means head. Cerebello means cerebellum. Cerebra means cerebrum. Duro means tough. Meninglo means meninges. Myelo means spinal cord. Neuro means nerve. Poly means gray matter. Encephalia means brain. Ganglio means ganglion. Glio means glue. Medulla means medulla. Okay, the nervous system is all about communication. It controls homeostasis by monitoring what is happening in the body and the outside environment. The nervous system has two main divisions. CNS, the central nervous system, composed of the brain and the spinal cord, serves as a central processing center. PNS, the peripheral nervous system, a network of all the nerves in the body that sends messages to and from the central processing center. The CNS, there are four divisions of the brain: cerebrum and its lobes, diencephalon, hypothalamus, and thalamus. I may not be pronouncing that right. I haven't ever heard it pronounced. Brainstem, medulla oblongata, pons, midbrain, reticular formation, cerebellum. Okay, the PNS, the peripheral nervous system. Nerves carry messages in two directions. Sensory neurons carry afferent, that's incoming messages to the brain and spinal cord. Motor neurons carry efferent, that's outgoing messages away from the brain and spinal cord. Some of the efferent messages travel motor neurons to stimulate skeletal muscles to move the body, so they belong to the summa mater. Summa means body. Anatomy of nervous system: the neuron, the nerve cell, neuroglia, dendrites, mitochondria, the nucleus, the cell body. The trigger zones: the axon hillock, the myelin sheath, the collateral organs, the axon, the Schwann cell. Okay, made of Ranvier nodes. Okay, highly branched processes of a neuron that receive signals and carry them toward the cell body are called dendrites. The cell body contains the nucleus and organelles for protein synthesis. The nervous system uses about 50 neurotransmitters were released from the knobs at the end of a nerve cell to make a muscle cell contract. In the case of a skeletal muscle, the neurotransmitters is acetylcholine. Protein neurotransmitters like acetylcholine are produced in the cell body. An axon leaves the neuron body at the axon hillock, also known as the trigger zone. While both types of transport involve synaptic vesicles moving within an axon, axonal transport moves synaptic vessels quickly to the synaptic knobs, and retrograde axonal moves synaptic vessels slowly back to the cell body. The terminal operarization of an axon ends with multiple synaptic knobs. At a synaptic knob, neurotransmitters are released into the synapse, where they bind to receptors on another cell. What is the function of the myelin sheath? To insulate axons. The gaps between segments of myelin along an axon are called nodes of Ranvier. Okay. The central nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system consists of all nerves that send information to and from the central processing center. The function of the nervous system is communication, motor control, and sensation. Sensory neurons carry efferent incoming messages to the brain and spinal cord. Motor neurons carry efferent outgoing messages away from the brain and spinal cord. The brain has four subdivisions: the cerebrum and its lobes, diencephalon, hypothalamus, and thalamus. Brain stem consists of medulla oblongata, pons, midbrain, reticular formation, cerebellum, I guess. Some of the efferent messages travel in motor neurons to stimulate skeletal muscles to move the body, so they belong to somatomotor division. Soma means body. The nervous system is all about communication. It controls homeostasis by monitoring what is happening in the body and the outside environment, analyzing the information. Okay, so this is a diagram I did of the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. An action potential is the flow of electricity along the axis of a neuron in one direction from the trigger zone to the synaptic knob. It differs from the local potential in any action potential is not graded. It has a threshold. If that minimal amount of stimulation is present at the trigger zone, the action potential happens. This is an all or nothing effect. A stronger stimulus at the trigger zone has no more effect than the threshold amount. If the local potential is sub-threshold at the trigger zone, no action potential begins. An action potential is not decremental. It does not decrease with distance. The action potential begun at the trigger zone of a motor neuron located in the spinal cord will be just as strong as the synaptic knob as it was at the trigger zone. This holds true even if the synaptic knob is at a flexor digitorum muscle 2 feet away. An action potential is not reversible. When the trigger zone of a neuron reaches a threshold, it will send an action potential. To understand the system divisions, you must look at the anatomy of a neuron, the nerve cell, and the neuron here that aid neurons in their function. A single neuron can be very long, measuring a meter or more, as it may start at the tip of your finger and end at your spinal cord. The cerebrum can be divided into 4 major lobes, named for the cranial bone that lie beneath, and a 5th lobe called the insula that lies deep under the lateral sulcus. Okay, so that's my drawing of the brain. That's my further drawing. Lobes are parietal, occipital, frontal, and temporal. The meningus forms a continuous covering over the brain and spinal cord, the meninges, between the vertebrae and the dura mater surrounding. The spinal cord is the epidural space which contains blood vessels, adipose tissue, and loose connective tissue. The space between the arachnoid matter and pia mater is a subarachnoid space. It contains cerebral spinal fluid, meninges of the membranes that surround and protect the brain and spinal cord. Okay, so I have a diagram. Okay. The spinal cord is a solid cylindrical structure in the vertebral cavity that extends from the foramen magnum to the inferior margin of the first lumbar vertebra. From there, a bundle of nerve roots called the cauda equina extends in the vertebral cavity. And I'm going to stop right there.